All right. Hello, everybody. How are you out there? Welcome back to the Yama channel, everybody. My name is Thinker St. James. You might notice that there is a little bit of a different look to the stream today. We've got some branding elements here that are a little bit different. Layout is slightly different. And of course, what's the big thing that's different? Oh, it might be the lack of co host that I have currently. Chase Parton is having some internet problems today, unfortunately. So it was just not going to work out as far as having both of us on screen, which really sucks because I hate not having Chase to have a nice conversation with about these fights. But we are going to get it going anyway. So I will, you might notice as well that, of course, the chat is not on screen, at least not currently. However, I do have the ability to bring you guys on here. And I will be able to now highlight people. So I can do that right now, actually. John Dong says, "What's up? What's up, John Dong? How are you, sir?" Anakin says, "What a weird card, A." I mean, um, yeah, I wouldn't. Was it weird? It wasn't as weird as some cards that we've had. Like as far as like goofiness goes, it was a little bit surprising, and I would say that it was a mixed bag. Of course, we are talking about UFC Fight Night, Moicano versus Saint-Denis. So even though I am without my tried and true co-host, Mr. Chase Barton, who we're going to miss very much today, I will still be breaking down all of the fights from UFC Fight Night, Moicano versus Saint Denis, as well as Week 7 of Dana White's Contender Series. So we got a lot of fights to talk about today between the two events. So let's jump on into the first fight here. And actually, before we do, if you are new, I will say that we are going to go over every single fight from those two cards. And if you have anything that is not pertaining to those fights, you can throw it in the chat and I will come to it at a later point. And now that I have the ability to highlight people's comments and stuff, then I can go back to whatever you said and pop it right up. So, kind of a cool little setup that we have here. I'm still getting used to how all of this stuff works. So, bear with me while I figure certain things out. But for right now, I think that we are pretty well good to go on getting into the fights. So, first fight was Balaji Oki versus Chris Duncan. If you recall, I had said that I thought that Chris Duncan would be the man to get the job done on this one. And I was strictly basing that on Oki being from Belgium, where fighting in its current state is a little bit new. And I mean, Oki was doing pretty okay, right? I'm seeing Anakin saying that he was doing so well. I agree. Um, I mean, the thing that I had in the notes is that Duncan fished for the guillotine, which he ended up getting later on, but he fished for the guillotine earlier in the round. Oki popped out of that and then didn't realize that he should be aware that it would still be something that could happen again. You know what I mean? Like it's like, bro, if you already know that he was like hunting for your neck earlier in the round, you probably should have been a little bit more aware in the sequence that ended up leading to the fight ending portion of the round. But the one thing that I did want to mention here about Duncan, because it was a little bit of a, yeah, I wouldn't say easy, because he was getting a couple of shots before the guillotine was sunk in, but it was not the most difficult um, choke to sink in once he had the opening. And the reason for that was that Oki goes for a trip, right? So like they're on the cage. Oki's trying to get his foot hooked under Duncan's foot to get the trip off. And when he does that, Duncan does this really cool small adjustment movement. I talk a lot about the small movements of MMA when it comes to the grappling and stuff. And Duncan did a really nice one of those. He sort of just slipped his body to the side in like an adjustment and then wrapped the neck up and happened to have the guillotine nice and solid, cinched that up. And I mean, apparently it looked like Oki was almost slipped out of it, but he must have been doing that in the throes of rigor mortis because he was he was out. Like Duncan had to alert the referee that he was out, which is never a good thing. A couple of people in the chat were mentioning how that was not a great look. It wasn't a great look. It was a little bit of an odd angle where the referee was at, and it also looked like Oki was getting himself ready to slip it. So I can't really be too mad at the referee for that one. But either way, regardless of that part of it, it was a submission. So theoretically, he'll be okay. He'll get the help he needs, kids. But yeah, I mean, overall, it was a really nice small movement that led into the ending sequence for Duncan. So I have to say that I was pretty impressed with that because Oki had laid on a couple of decent shots leading up to that. So really, um, is this an indication that Duncan's going to go on some, massive run hereafter? Not necessarily. Is this an indication that Oki is, not going to be able to come back and get any wins thereafter himself? No. It was just one of those deals where one dude got caught and the other dude capitalized on the opening really, really well. That's the thing that I would take away from this fight more so than anything else is that Duncan showed really nice fight IQ by recognizing that he had the opening that he had, doing the adjustment. Because if you go back and watch that replay, I think I liked about it the most was how effortless the adjustment was. He slips his body to the side, grabs the neck up, pulls back with all that he's got, and he has it. And this is something too that we talk about when it comes to guys like recognizing that they have the guillotine if they're going to pull guard. Now he wasn't throwing the legs up pull guard, but obviously if he's already somewhat in the falling back position to go to the ground, then you're pulling guard whether or not you throw the legs up, right? So you always want to make sure that you have the guillotine fully locked in before you even so much as lean backwards in an attempt like that. I thought it was very nice to see that Duncan recognized that he had it. So overall, a good awareness on the part of Chris Duncan. So shout out to him for a nice victory because you can see these numbers. I mean, Oki with the significant strikes over double what Duncan had landed leading up to that. And the control time goes to Lagioki as well, because he had been in control for a while before the submission was locked in. So Duncan took a little bit of opposition there, even though it was only in the first round. I mean, it was, a minute or so, whatever, that he had to endure because 29 shots in, less than a minute if you consider how much time he was in the guillotine. He took a little bit of opposition. So Oki was doing okay until he wasn't, but Duncan showing some nice awareness, and I appreciated that. Shout out to Scotland. Hopefully, we can have a wrestler and grappler from Scotland who can be consistent in his abilities. Shout out to Paul Craig. Sadly to say, I mean, I like Paul Craig a lot, but we've got to be honest with ourselves, right? So maybe Duncan could be the next guy to fill that slot. We'll see. Duncan got a nice finish, but we saw some holes in his game, says Anakin. I would agree with that. But I mean, I think that since it was such a one round affair that it's hard to put all of that on him. Like I think he adjusted nicely to make up for the holes that may have been there. So good performance for him. And a decent way to start this card because this card, as I had mentioned, I think is a little bit up and down. Little bit up and down as far as the quality level goes. But a good quick submission to start it off definitely made me happy. So moving on, Nora Cornol versus Jacqueline Cavalcante. I thought going into this that Cornol was going to be a little more aggressive than she ended up being. She looked very. I think that the issue with Cornell, based on this performance versus her last performance, is that if she doesn't have the full on control of the situation, like if she's not having the fight that she wants, she gets like flustered. Is the way that it looked to me, at least from her body language, because she looked slow and she was on the back foot the entire fucking fight. I mean, like I don't think that there was a single time in that fight that she was pushing forward. She was reacting to everything and having to stay on the back foot because of it. Like, because Cavalcante was not pushing a crazy pace. It was not a pace that was insurmountable for Cornell. She just was cautious, I guess is the best way to put it, until it was too late. Cavalcante was very composed, picked some nice shots, but it really didn't take all that much to make this happen because of how Cornell was fighting. So this ended up being a split decision somehow. Uh, Cavalcante deserved the win, and she got it. But just like Cavalcante's last fight, which I thought that she did not necessarily deserve the win for that fight against Josini Nunez, but she got that win too, as Anakin saying here, back-to-back decision wins for Cavalcante. That is true, and that not exactly a great look, but hey, a win's a win, right? I mean, I guess you got to look at it that way if you're her. What I'm getting at here is that I'm not inspired greatly on either side of this equation. Let's say that this was a down the line, straight up, tie situation where it should have been a draw because it was so close that the split decision made sense. It was not that, but for sake of argument, we'll say that it was. I wouldn't feel like either of these women are showing me that that they're destined for greater in the sport. But I mean, what do I know? Maybe Cavalcante will start putting together some heavier shots, because that's, I think, one of the bigger issues that I see as well with Cavalcante is that she moves decently. She's a little bit twitchy at times, but she can also stay pretty composed at times too. I think that she also kind of gets a little reactionary based on what's coming back at her, but in this fight, she didn't have to be very twitchy because Cornell was really just stomping her foot every once in a while to try to get her to bite, but she wasn't biting. So if there's nothing to back up the bark, then what's the difference? I mean, you can bang your foot as much as you want. So yeah, I didn't see anything from either one of these women that inspired a great amount of confidence going forward. And as Anakin said, two back-to-back split decision wins for Cavalcante is not a great look in totality. But this would be on, a little bit of the downer side of where we would be in this card, because again, this is a little bit of an up and down situation here. But we move on. So not terrible though. This wasn't like the worst fight on the card or anything. I mean, like, just another one that kind of filled up the early prelims, and I didn't think it was that bad. I just didn't think that it was very inspirational on either side. So moving on to, this is Victor Altamirano versus Danielle Barez, or Bareth, if you want to do the whole Spanish pronunciation thing like Bisbing was trying to get Felder to do on commentary. I thought that was kind of funny, back and forth between the two of them. Bareth carried the prelim, says Anakin. I don't know if it was that to that level, but I mean, I guess if you're looking down the line, maybe you're not wrong. Because it was a pretty decent performance. Heavy hands on Barez when he lays them on. Before we even get into the fight itself, does anybody know the story of Barez having some type of metal lodged in his skull? I heard them talking about that on commentary briefly when we were going into this fight, and I was like, he what happened? I was like, wait, what? um, I didn't get all of the details because I don't think that Gooden had all of the details. He kind of just threw it out there during the walkouts, like, yes, there was a crazy situation. He had a piece of metal lodged in his head. I was like, excuse me? So I don't know exactly what happened there, but apparently Barres had some type of metal, perhaps a rebarb, uh, lodged into his skull at some point. Seemed to be okay at this juncture, but in the lead up, that was a little bit of an odd thing to hear, and hopefully there are no lasting effects because yeah, that was a little bit crazy. Both of these guys were fast. You know, they're definitely bouncy flyweights, I would call them. You know, smaller guys. But whenever you see flyweights with decent power in their hands, that is what you want to keep an eye on. Because really, when it comes to flyweight, you're either a world ending grappler or you can get the job done with your hands. There's really not much in between. I mean, you could loosely apply that to a lot of MMA, but I would say that it is specifically applicable to flyweight because of everybody being smaller. Um, Anakin poses the question, why did Altamirano not shoot for takedowns like his last fight? I think that the answer to that, based on the performance that Barres was putting on, was that I think that he was respecting the power, to be perfectly honest. Um, in the notes here, saying that Barres hits hard, he got dropped early. So, I mean, a lot of times a guy gets dropped early in the fight, it's going to, it's going to be a little bit of a deterrent for them to want to shoot in. They're worried about getting caught on the shoot, getting caught with a knee. It's like, shit, if this guy can fucking throw his hands like that, he throws a knee as fast as he's throwing his hands. That's blunt force impact. I would think that he might have been a little bit nervous about what was coming back at him with good reason. Um, Altamirano landed a nice spinning back fist in the third to break Barres' nose. But he did end up getting dropped himself for the trouble. So that I guess is also the note to make is that Barres was doing some really nice counter work in general because Altamirano, when he would let go, he did pretty decently, and when he was leading the dance, he did okay. But the issue that I saw was much like Nora Cornol, Altamirano was on the back foot a lot of the fight. He kicked nicely from the back foot. That was a little bit of a difference there between the two of them. But at the same time, you cannot be on the back foot the entire fight. I mean, unless you're really, 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 really skilled that way. Um, who Norma Dumont, I would say, is a decent example of somebody who's pretty good like that. Um, is Norma Dumont who fought who was no, it wasn't Norma Dumont because Norma Dumont just fought Irene Aldana. Um, who am I thinking of here? Um, Jessica Andrade. Who was her last opponent? Natalia Silva. That's who I was thinking of. Yeah, Natalia Silva is another example of somebody who can do it decently off the back foot for like a long time in a fight because that's pretty much what she was doing against Andrade. But this Victor Altamirano was not that. And kind of crazy to see that the total strikes were as close as they were and that Altamirano landed more significant strikes overall. But I do think that the decision was warranted to go to Barres. And it is unfortunate for Victor that he is on a 3-fight losing streak. Now, you never want to be on a 3-fight losing streak in the organization that we know is a death sentence for a lot of guys. So we'll see what ends up happening to him. You want to see Barres versus Ode Osborne or Lazy Boy next? Yeah, either one of those would make sense. Because Barres as 17-6 now, like, I mean, he's definitely like in that category of dudes that like need to put on like he needs to start mounting a lengthier win streak, you know? He was just coming off of that quick sub by Jafil Filio. So this is good to get him back in the win column, but he needs to put together a streak here to, make himself get to the next level if that's what he's trying to do. And a win over one of those guys would be pretty cool for that. So I think that's decent matchmaking. But we'll see what ends up happening. And Altamirano might be on the chopping block. See what happens there. Moving on. Looking at Eileen Perez versus Daria Zalesniakova. Of course, before we get into anything related to the fight itself, it is pertinent that we mention that Perez missed weight by 0.5 of a pound, half a pound. Very shitty that when that happens. And Bisbing on commentary made a great point that when they miss by such a small amount, it generally means that the weight cut was really bad. So unfortunate that she missed it all, but it was that I would say that missing by that amount is the worst way to miss, because not only did you miss, so you're forfeiting your purse, a portion of your purse, and you've got the stigma of missing weight. But if you're missing by only half a pound, the weight cut was already shitty. So like you're in this terrible situation where you tried to cut weight, it went really poorly, and now you've still missed weight even after killing your body in order to get there. So it's just an unfortunate situation when that happens in general. But she missed weight, whatever. The one thing, and of course, I obviously would have loved to have this guy, the creative player himself, Chase Parton, in the chat for this one. Of course, because he is a big fan of Miss Perez. What I will say about Eileen Perez, and I think Chase has even made this point on the show before, is that Perez uses her weight extremely well. She's a thick girl in more ways than one. She uses her body weight very well. She is very skilled at forcing her will via body weight. That I would say is kind of a theme for this card in general, was that there was a lot of control from some of the more dominant fighters in the on this card in these fights. The more dominant fighter was generally the one that was using their body weight effectively and putting advanced pressure on, because once they were in a situation to capitalize on the pressure, once they were in a situation where there was an opening based on the pressure they were putting on, they did pretty well. So, Lane, what up? Not a fan of either woman, to be honest. Yeah, I mean that is kind of that was the note that I had about the earlier ladies on the card, Cavalcante and Cornol. Um, I would say that Perez is doing decently with the streak that she's on, because I believe that that's 5 for her now, or four in a row for her now. So, I mean, she's building decent wins. So I guess you can say that that's something, but I would probably also tend to agree that, like the last female fight, when we start getting into the higher echelons of the sport, once we start getting towards rankings and stuff like that, things get maybe a little bit dicier for Perez. Selesniakova needs to get out there and drill a lot more in order to hang in general. Because really, the issue that arose in this fight was that Perez used the body weight to get the takedown. After Zalesniakova had fought it the first time, she basically falls onto her and secures the head and arm like nothing. I mean, like there was nothing to stop the head and arm once she sunk it in. And she didn't even have to really adjust all that much. You heard Felder on the commentary say, oh, all she needs to do is swing her body over to the other side. That's generally what you want to do. You know, if you're straight down the body line of your opponent, you generally want to swing yourself over into side, you know, the position of side control, but, you know, with the head and arm locked in, you want to swing your body over to the side and put the pressure on that way because it's a better angle to cut off the circulation of the blood flow. But she didn't need to. That was another one. It was similar to the choke out in Manchester, the Modestus Bukauskas choke out, which was also a head and arm, which was also straight down the body. So obviously, I say all of that to say Zalesniakova needs to get herself into, you know, some more awareness, like when it comes to her training and all that kind of stuff, because, you know, she was not at all anticipating what was pretty well. I mean, I wouldn't say it was necessarily 100% telegraphed, but you have to know that if you're open like that, you got to roll through. I mean, you got to be bucking and you know, creating scrambles and stuff like that, because it's you know, it's going to be a bad night for you, which it turned out to be for her. It turned out to be so bad, she had Aileen Perez twerking in her face. That's not cool. That's not cool when you just got choked the fuck out. She finished from a position that Pennington couldn't. That's an interesting note, because my other note to close out this segment was that Aileen Perez is claiming that she wants Kayla Harrison. I was like, well, let's back up just a second here. Let's pump the brakes, Miss Perez. Great win. Congratulations on a nice win. I think that fucking Kayla Harrison would send you into the shadow realm so quickly. Like, I don't think that there's any two ways about it. That would be a very, very long, very painful evening for Aileen Perez, or it could be the shortest evening that she's ever had, depending on how fucking Kayla Harrison feels on the night of. Because Kayla Harrison can do literally no wrong in my book right now. I mean, I think that she is going to get that belt fight after next. That is the thinker early prediction on that one. Kayla Harrison, that is. But we'll see what the deal is. Anyway, I mean, so, you know, I was going to ask Chase all of these things that I had planned as conversation pieces. Now get posed to you, chat. You know, bring you guys back on for a little minute here. So, what are your thoughts and feelings on Perez twerking in the face of Zalesniakova? Are we okay with this? Are we comfortable with this type of a situation going on? Because she's walking around. Perez is walking around with the goat chain, which I'm like, I don't know about all that, you know. Then she's twerking in her opponent's face. I'm like, I really don't know how I feel about that. And look, I'm not here to judge anybody who has an OnlyFans, because I don't really think that that has anything to do with fighting. So she can do whatever she wants on OnlyFans. But it is what I will say about Aileen Perez, personally feeling here, is that she's becoming like you know, me and Chase have talked about this before, where you create your own story in MMA, right? Your storyline is based on your fights and whatever you choose to present to the world outside of the octagon. She is making her story that she is the booty shaking OnlyFans model fighter. That's what Aileen Perez's story is becoming. And I'm not mad at that. But when you pair that with shaking your ass in your opponent's face, you know, it just starts to get a little bit much for me when it comes to just general sportsmanship. But then again, Brian Battle, we'll talk about him in a little while, goes out and tells an entire country to go fuck themselves. So maybe there's levels to disrespect. I don't know. I was just curious what y'all's opinions were. I really don't have too much of a problem with it. I thought it was a little distasteful that she was putting her ass in her face, but it is the fight game. You know, it is within your right, I suppose. Lane says it was bad form. Doesn't matter if it's once or I can feel that. Patty did it to Jordan Levitt once, and so there was that. Yeah, well, he did a full on teabagging. That's a little bit different. That's a little bit different. And honestly, that was pretty fucking hilarious. I ain't gonna lie. So again, am I a hypocrite for thinking that that was funny and hers might not have been? I mean, honestly, I don't know. Maybe it was funny. I didn't really like think that too deep into it. Was it funny? Was there a funny element to it? I don't know. Anyway, food for thought, I suppose. But it is what it is. And she did get the win, and she did get it early. So she does have every right to celebrate. But, you know, it is one of those things. And really, I guess the other thing too is that what is going to be the next thing? If that's her thing now, she's twerking in people's faces. Like, she did a handstand at one point, I believe. Like, she keeps trying to top herself with her twerking. Like, where does that top out? She's going to have to do a handstand in the middle of the cage with nothing to support her feet. Like, she's going to have to do it like straight up mid-cage handstand twerk, and then maybe do some choreographed shit with her team after that. You know, she's going to have to call in Michelle Pajeda to do a choreographed routine with her. Daria said some shit about Eileen pre-fight. That's why Eileen celebrated in her face. Yeah, I had heard something like that. Shout out to Larry, by the way, the homie. I had heard something like that, but I didn't know exactly what she said. And the only thing that I had heard that she had said was that she was going to put an end to the dirty dancing, which I thought was kind of just like a little tongue-in-cheek sort of thing. Either way, we might see Perez twerking during the fight soon. There you go. That's one step up. That would be one step up, Anakin. Mid-fight twerking. You see all these guys pointing to the ground. You see them doing all their little, like, you know, your kick missed me. Whoa, you know, one of those types of deals. She just goes in there and straight up just starts twerking. If her opponent does not engage, I would not be surprised if that does happen at some point. Which, honestly, if she did that I might be okay with, because that's funny as fuck. I mean, everybody liked it when Nick Diaz laid down in the middle of the cage, right? You know? It's levels. It's levels. It's levels to the trash. I don't know. I don't think it's that bad, but it was just something I was curious y'all's opinion on. All right, let's move on here, though. We got a lot more fights to go over. We got Taylor Lapilus versus Vince Morales. We talked about Vince Morales coming into this fight. I was saying, bro, I hope that Morales goes out of the organization and gets himself some solid wins and some advancement in his technique in general, that he becomes a better fighter, a more well-rounded fighter outside of the organization, so that when he comes back, we have a really nice showing from him. I thought that this was not the worst showing of all time for him, but it was not enough yet again. And this is yet another fight where I'm seeing Taylor Lapilus. I was not super impressed with him with his last fight. I'm seeing him here again, getting a unanimous decision win. You know, I mean, 30-27s across the board. I'm still not jiving with this guy's style all that much. And I don't really know what it is, because he's a plotting counterer. You know, he doesn't extend himself too far as like overextending. You know, he's not out there being super explosive and dynamic. Plotting is really the way to put it. He reminds me of a less technically sound, maybe slightly less, or like maybe a better way to put it is a clunky version of Jalen Turner. is kind of how I see this guy. Like he's kind of oafy in his movements sometimes. Like I don't know the way he carries his body. Just like I'm not super impressed by this dude. But that all said, Lapalus was putting it on Morales. Morales took a kick to his side that left a huge red welt on his back. There was a red, what looked, I guess, like a scratch. I rewatched it because we were talking about it on the watch along, myself and Vitz King, on Saturday afternoon. We were watching the fights, and I had said that it looked like it might have been like a bug bite or something because that's just the way that it looked. Like it was like red all around it, and then this like centralized uh, patch of like bright red. It was like irritation all around this one spot. He did not have it coming into the fight, so it was a kick that did it. The way that the irritation made it look, though, it might have been a toenail scratch that did that. And if that is the case, then a that would have been a failure on the part of the commission, which I would say that the commission in France is as emerging as the sport itself is in the country, because the commission was not doing 100% great with every one of these fights. There were a couple of decisions or split decisions that was like, what the fuck? And there were a couple of referee moments. There weren't any like super egregious ones, except for the one that was egregious, which was Jacqueline Cavalcante's fence grab. She grabbed the cage at one point. That was egregious as fuck. She probably should have gotten a point taken away for that, but that didn't happen. Other than that, there were not any like super crazy egregious ones, but enough that it was not great. You know what I mean? Like the commission, it needs some improvement of its own. So either way, back to the fight itself. What up, Rick Allen? How you doing? Matt Frivola passed away. You're pretty sure he passed away in the cage. I don't. I think that Matt Frivola is doing okay now, but I could certainly understand why you might have thought that because bro was out. We'll talk about that fight coming up in a little bit. So yeah, the first round was slow between Lapalus and Morales. Lapalus landed a nice knee in the second. I mean, really, there's not all that much other than that to talk about. I mean, like, yeah, decent performance. He's okay with the pressure, but it's mostly coming from counters, so it's really more reactionary. He's not pressuring a whole hell of a lot. He's not leading the dance a whole hell of a lot. He's okay when he's in that position, but like, it's few and far between. I didn't see enough forward motion from Lapalus to be like super impressed by him. And unfortunately, like that's just building on an opinion that I already had about him. Hole first was a slug bug. Eh, I mean, I guess you could say they were trading, but it just the whole thing, like the whole fight was just like, I don't know. It just the pace was like, it just felt like it was Lapalus setting traps, Morales getting caught here and there. I just didn't. I don't know. I wasn't really jiving with it too much. I'm just again. I was waiting for this fight to be the performance that was going to break my opinion of Taylor Lapalus, and it just didn't do that. So again, not the worst fight I've ever seen, but it just, you know, didn't enthuse me all that much. Although I will say that Lapalus does mix up his attacks nicely. He will throw some decent elbows. I thought his elbows were really nice. Um, you know, high low, body head. So there was some good work with that. Maybe I'm just a hater. I don't know. Maybe that's the case. Maybe that's what's going on here. Oh, we got a Yamacat sighting, everybody. You want to come up here, buddy? Hey. Here, come here. There he is. Say hello, everybody. Omen the Yamacat checking in. Being a little menace. This little guy freaking running around at 3 o'clock in the morning. What do we got going on here? Need to see Frivola versus Dober too. Need the boy Dober back to get that win. That would probably be where he'd get that win if it was going to happen at this point. Yeah, we'll talk about Frivola coming up in a little bit. All right, so let's move on. Let's go to Ludovic Klein versus Roosevelt Roberts. This wasn't. I mean, if like this fight, the Lopoulos versus Morales fight was not as boring as this fight. Like again, this was somewhat of a checkered event as far as quality level goes, in my opinion. So if the Lopoulos versus Morales fight was not great, of course, Lopoulos ended up winning that fight, unanimous decision. This fight was a lot less intense action coming off of a fight that I thought the action, that I thought the action was not all that intense in that one either. Was it the worst fight that I've ever seen? No. Was the Ludovic Klein Roosevelt Roberts fight the worst fight I've ever seen? No. But closer than the other one. Closer than the Lopoulos fight. Anyway, Roosevelt Roberts, what I said coming into this fight was that he had not really impressed me all that much on Tough and was continuing to not impress me. I would say that trend continues with this fight. I did think that it was cool that Roberts had mentioned on Tough that he wanted to move back to Florida to follow Michael Chandler over to Kill Cliff, which he ended up doing. I thought that was pretty awesome of him to, he threw it out there that was something that he wanted to do, and he followed through. So I thought that was cool. However, it did not do much for his performance in this fight because it was an all pressure affair from Ludovic Klein, all control, nothing from Roberts off of his back whatsoever. Bit of a boring fight. Klein wins. Did he live up to his minus 1,000 favorite status? I mean, a win's a win, so I guess so. But this would appear to me to be another example of what we around these parts call betflation. This is where, these odds makers are inflating these odds. And this was a bit of an egregious one for a minus 1,000. I mean, he was in control the entire time, so I guess you could say that like he didn't leave any thought that there could be an opposition coming back that could have gotten him in a negative spot. But the fact that he was going through 3 rounds of the fight means that you have 15 entire minutes for the tides to change. He didn't let that happen, so that's great. But for a minus 1,000, anywhere past fucking minus 800, you should be fucking going out there and finishing the dude. That should be a fucking Isaac Dolgarian situation. That's a guy. Even that fight might be a little bit not as warranted, right? Because I mean, he went to the second round. So all I'm saying is these fights need to have appropriate lines attached to them, and I think that these odds makers are jumping on the trend of the countries that they're in and seeing that inflation is bad everywhere. We're going to pump up these bets. They're getting inflated as well. The next fight surprised Mr. Parton with excitement. That would be the Umar Sy versus Dawoon Jung fight. This was, not a terrible fight. I thought that it was more competitive than I was expecting. I expected Sy to kind of just steamroll Jung. It was not that, but it was pretty one-sided. at least at times. It wasn't necessarily the fight that I was expecting. Turned out to be an okay fight, but pretty much we were talking on the previous stream about whether or not this was going to be a a coming out party, a big showcase for C. I don't know if I'd necessarily go that far because it was decently competitive, but still, um, a good one overall. I would say that they both looked a little bit slow and that it was somewhat boring, but not as bad. And it was, but with them both sort of looking similar, I would say that it was competitive within that framework. C just slightly outpaced him. Unanimous decision win for him. I think that that's pretty all right. Um, wish I saw more of the 4 KO Umar because his striking looks really sluggish, but wrestling always going to be great. Yeah, I mean like I just think he looked slightly sluggish. Period in this fight, and when you're coming off of all of those great finishes, it is unfortunate not to have that same level of intensity. Because I would have liked to seen a vintage performance for him over a decently known name in the sport. Could have been a more of a showcase fight for him. I think that because I was saying going into that fight, I'm like, this could be a guy from France to watch out for. And now I guess it's looking more like maybe fucking Morgan Charrier might be the guy to look out for. Or actually, Fares Ziam, he's the one that really, his stock was the one that rose the most from all of the affairs. I mean, I'd say that knee is what everybody's going to remember the most, besides Benoit Saint-Denis getting his ass kicked in one round. But I digress. Western Mass Climber. Some casual just linked you to this channel. Is it any good? I don't know. You tell me. Thank you to that casual. So anyway, decent win for C, but not the greatest win. Not the win that I would have liked for him to be like the dude. You know what I mean? Like, oh man, France really has a major contender on their hands now. I don't think it was necessarily that. But a win that he should have gotten if he's going to be in the conversation in the future at some point, because he is 11-0 and he's fighting light heavyweight, obviously a very competitive division that could easily get shaken up with guys like him. So he can perhaps mount something interesting for himself going forward, but he just needs to be a little bit more explosive to get people to remember the name, because we'll remember the name. Will other people know him and care to see him fight? That's going to be the question that we'll have to find out going forward. All right. So speaking of making a name for yourself, Ivan Ursulin did not do that. Sad to say. As I had mentioned before, this fight going into it, this was going to be a fight. This is Iwan Kutelaba versus Ivan Ursulin. This was going to be a fight where it was either going to be the new guy coming into the organization to make a big name for himself, really prove that he deserves to be there, and show out against a veteran, or the veteran was going to show that there are levels to this game. Kutelaba, for as fucking unorthodox and awkward as his striking is, showed that there are levels to the game. Because I mean, he really Kutelaba is just, he's a wild man. He's doing that fucking possum play. I mean, like he's playing possum out there. He's fucking he's smacking himself in the face. He's throwing all kinds of crazy strikes. He threw like a spinning kick that was like a flying spinning kick. It's like he jumped off the ground with one foot and then spun and kicked. I was like, bro, what are you doing? Very strange. But for all of that being said, it somehow was effective enough. Some of it was effective against Urslan. But, this was a good fight to show you why Iwan Kutelaba is in the position that he's in now. This is how you know how he got to be fucking 18 and 10, 18 10 and 1. You know what I'm saying? Like the way that he fights, like a more skilled fighter, a dude who's been around more, a dude who's like a little bit more battle tested, could easily navigate the crazy shit that he does. So you're kind of getting a clearer picture of Iwan Kutelaba. Even though he won this fight, you're getting a clearer picture of why he loses some of his fights as well from this fight. On Urslan's side of the equation, I'd say that he defended well, but he had to do too much of it in the first 2 rounds. Then, when he had his opportunity in the third round, he did not capitalize on it in the slightest. That was really unfortunate. He finally, after 2 rounds of really having to be in defensive situations over and over and over again, finally got into the driver's seat and basically left the car in neutral. So, not great. Still a split decision again on this one. This would be another example of what I was talking about with the commission being a little bit wonky out there in gay Paris. But either which way, the decision did go to Kutelaba, and it was deserved. So not the greatest showing for the newcomer Urslan, but Kutelaba did show that the experience sometimes trumps these new dudes, and that's okay. That's an okay thing. So good for Kutelaba to not have yet another loss on the record, but the record is still going to be very checkered, and I don't think that there's really much of a forward trajectory for Kutelaba at this point, but anything can happen, I suppose. How old is Kutelaba at this point now? He is 30 years old, so I mean, there could be. Dude's 30 years old, looks about 48. But yeah, only 30 years old. Perhaps there might be some future for him, but if there's going to be 18 and 10 is fucking atrocious. So you got to start getting a lot more victories, go on a decent run, then maybe there's a conversation to be had. Because I mean, for a while there, he was in danger of getting cut. I mean, a win like that will keep you around, because I guarantee you he would have gotten cut if he had lost that fight. But I would say that maybe another organization might be a good idea for Kutelaba. That's what I would say. I think that Bellator might be a better fit for him. And if he goes over there at 30, then maybe there's a bright future for him in Bellator or PFL or, Brave, Ryzen, wherever, one. Any of the other organizations, I think he might have a little bit of a better shot of becoming a champion, going on a good run, turning his somewhat checkered career around. I think would be a good idea. Moving on, we've got Fares Zayam versus Matt Frivola. We were just talking about it. Decent fight overall. Matt Frivola had that guillotine midway through the first. Did not secure it, unfortunately, but it looked like it was secure. I think he might have let it go, and I was like, damn, dude. I know that you needed to adjust, but that was unfortunate considering what would happen thereafter. And I'm seeing all of the talk in the chat about the collarbone, shoulder bone separation on Moicano. We will absolutely be getting into that. Don't you worry. But back to Frivola versus Zayam. Zayam landed a nice right that stunned Matt in the first round as well. First round was decently competitive in general. Nice elbows from Zayam. Nice use of his range. I very much appreciate that with these longer, lankier guys. Use the gifts you are given. We'll talk about dude on the Contender series who did not do that. and I was really not happy about the way that he was fighting. The knee in the third, obviously, is the story of the fight. And what I would say, piggybacking off what I was just saying, is that Ziam, long and rangy, long limbs, lankier dude. The distance that his leg had to travel to land that knee with the power that the knee had. It's not just the fact that he landed the knee. That was crazy, right? But he landed that knee and he had to have gotten it like a good foot and a half, 2 feet off the ground. I mean, like, it was like if you're standing straight up tall, I mean, it had to arch. The arch was like, whoom, like that. It had to like come up and over. And I'm like, it's not the fact that he landed that knee. Like, yeah, you can get your leg up that high, but to land that knee with the amount of force that he had on it and doing the smart thing that he did of pushing the head into the knee, that's the other component of it that he needs to get a lot of credit for. Because not only did he get that knee up, but he had the hand over here. So the knee, boom, like that. Hand pushes over, knee goes into head. Really, really nice work on that for Ziam. So it was really that's all you got to say about it. Really, a nice technical performance for Ziam leading up to that knee. The knee itself was really impressive. I would say that Ziam would be an example of a fighter who changed my mind because I did not have a very high opinion of him either. Strictly off of fighting, of course. I mean, I don't know much about him as a person, but based on what I'd seen in his previous fights, I did not necessarily see a great deal to put my confidence in behind him. But with a performance like that, you have made a fan out of me, sir. So can he replicate that going forward? That's, of course, going to be the question. But really nice performance for him. As far as Matt Frivola goes, man, like, this is really starting to get upsetting when it comes to Matt because he was taking some heavy damage earlier. Now he is on a 2-fight losing streak after a 3-fight win streak, one of those being Drew Dober. I don't want to see my boy Frivola going down this negative road, man. It hurts. I was really backing the American Muscle in this fight, but Matt, you're not holding up your end of the bargain here, getting yourself knocked out by Fariz Ziam. Unfortunate. Unfortunate indeed. We'll see what they end up pairing Matt up with next, but 3-fight losing streak. You know how that goes, dude. You're knocking on death's door there. Hopefully, he will be able to right the course and get himself back in the win column. All right, moving on to Morgan Charrier versus Gabriel Miranda. Sadly, the plus 1100 Gabriel Miranda submission was not followed through on. Charrier looked pretty goddamn sharp, I would say. Thing that I wanted to say about Miranda was that he pulled guard at some really inopportune times. And unlike Chris Duncan, who we were talking about at the beginning of the stream, you can't just randomly pull guard and expect not to be in a situation that is very, very bad for you. Because the only good thing that comes from pulling guard is if you actually have the choke. If you have the guillotine tight enough to get the submission, then perhaps that's an okay thing to do. There's a reason that "don't be silly, jump the gilly" is a meme. It's a fun thing to say, and it's funny when people do it if you're Dustin Poirier, but even Dustin Poirier knows how bad that can be. And a lot of these other guys are now figuring it out when they are on their back getting pummeled because they pulled guard at a weird time. So I think that it was an unfortunate deal for Miranda that he was hunting for the submission a little bit too hard. Sometimes these guys, obviously we had talked about on the previous week that Miranda's 16 wins, I believe, out of his 17, I think it was. Yeah, say he was 17-6 going into the fight. 16 of those wins were by submission, so you know what he's aiming for, but you got to be fight aware. If it is not working to your advantage, you can't go back to the well too many times. Shout out to Brendan Allen, who we'll talk about in a little bit. But yeah, Miranda got caught turning his head. He lands a back fist, but eats a heavy hook from Charrier to go night night early in the second round. So Morgan Charrier's got the power, man. He's got power in his hands. He's got the triple X Tentacion hair going on. I think that he needs somebody who's going to really give him some problems at this point, because he's coming off of two really nice wins. Anakin saying Morgan Charrier versus Cub Swanson is a possibility. I mean, I would be very sad for my dude Cub, because that would absolutely be the organization feeding the young hungry dude to or feeding the old man to the young hungry dude. But I mean, it might be warranted at this point for Charrier, because I mean, he's coming off of that. The last win was a knockout as well, right? Oh no, oh, I thought shoot, my bad. Yeah, all of the other wins had been knockouts. I thought that he was on a 2-fight win streak. No, he lost to Chepe Mariscal, but back in the win column with another knockout, and all of his others in his last 5. He's 4-1 in his last 5. All of the others being knockouts or TKOs. So, I mean, do you let the loss to Chepe Mariscal color the rest of the rest of your opinion about how he should be going forward? I don't know. I wouldn't say so necessarily, but it was recent, and that does not help his case. It's like, oh, you're 1-1 in your last 2, if you look at it that way, right? So 20-10, kind of a crazy record for the guy, considering that he is he like 20 something? Yeah, he's 28 years old with 30 professional fights. It's pretty crazy. And a draw in there too, so 21. But yeah, I mean, nice performance for him. And we'll see what they end up doing. I mean, obviously, it's going to take a really good wrestler and a good grappler to be able to put this guy away. If he's knocking everybody out, don't let the dude stay on his feet. I think it's pretty simple in that regard, but easier said than done. Miranda and Frivola got finished by 2 French dudes. Oh, we'll talk about Mr. Battle. Actually, we'll talk about him right now. This is Kevin Jousset versus Brian Battle. Of course, as I make very clear around here, Brian Battle, friend of the channel, and someone that I am a fan of. Brian took a little bit of opposition early in this fight. Nothing he couldn't overcome, but a little bit. A little bit. He got dumped on his face early, worked through that early pressure from Jousset, turning the tables, early in the fight. What I would say is that he kind of overcommitted to the takedowns in the first and took a few shots because of it. Maybe not because of it, but in addition to that, he also took some shots. But he course corrected in the second round, and that was what mattered. Jousset got worn down significantly in the second round, and Brian sensed it. Brian has a really decent fight IQ, so he was well aware of what was going on throughout the entirety of the fight. Brian stood flat in Jouset's face, turned up the power. He made some good reads of his own. So all of that, pretty good stuff. And then, of course, was able to finish the fight. So Bryan Battle getting the second round TKO. Good stuff. But I don't think that I could get out of this portion of the stream without talking about his post fight. So, what did everybody think of his post fight interview, his Octagon interview? USA in this hoe, baby. I know you didn't think that a butcher was going to lose in a fist fight to a French dude. I thought it was pretty all right. And the difference between him doing that and Eileen Perez twerking in her opponent's face is that the crowd was booing the fuck out of him. So, yeah, I mean, I'm okay with it. I am okay with it. Bryan Battle not letting the French fans get off the hook, giving them shit back when they were giving it to him. So, great win for Bryan Battle. He's the man. And the streak continues. I'm glad to see him doing good work after what happened in the Angelosa fight. That's my main thing there. Because the Angelosa fight was bullshit and I felt bad for him. So it's nice to see him continuing on in a forward progression, not letting that fight, stifle his progress. Josette actually did well, and he shows that he has that chin. Yeah, I mean that's what I was saying earlier. Is that I think that he did pretty decently earlier on in the fight. He just got overwhelmed because Bryan made some really nice reads. He's a pretty solid fight IQ, or he has a pretty solid fight IQ, I should say. And when he saw that he was getting the better of Josette, he turned up the power. He has the power to do that. I thought that the fight was really, it was a really solid showing of Battle's fight IQ for that exact reason, because Josette was doing well. He like all of the adjustments that Bryan made throughout the fight led up to how he ended up finishing it. Because as I had said earlier, he was overcommitted to the takedown early in the first. He took a couple of shots, on top of him kind of overcommitting to the wrestling. All of that in the second, he made all of the adjustments. I think that that is exactly what you want to see. If something's not working in a fight, you cannot continue to go back to the well over and over and over again. And we'll talk about Brandon Allen here in a minute, but you can't go back to the well over and over and over and expect for a different outcome, right? That's like that classic definition of insanity type of thing. So I think that he made some really nice adjustments and it worked out very good for him. What do I think about Battle versus Magny or Chaos next? Ooh, I think Magny's retired, is he not? Did he? I think that that he at least said that he's going to step away from the sport for a little while. Chaos Williams, though, I do like that fight. I think that would be kind of cool. I think that would be a good tough test for Bryan for sure, because Chaos he's a tough guy. A little checkered himself, but still. Battle versus the winner of Zaleski versus Dalby. That's a good fight too. And I would say that Dalby would probably take that fight if that's official. So I like that. Dalby and Zaleski don't deserve to be at the Apex. Yeah, I mean, if that's the deal there, I mean, the Apex still needs its good fights too, so I'm not mad at that. But if that's official, I didn't see that one announced as official, but if it is, then yeah, that would be cool. But honestly, I think that Bryan's probably angling for some ranked competition at this point. I mean, aside from the Angelosa fight, like he's all wins for, for a while now, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, yeah, I mean, aside from Fakhretdinov, which was only in 2022. So I guess you could say that that's somewhat recent, but that was December of 2022. This huge win streak here, one loss. So I mean, really, if you're if you're counting it how some people would count it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So he's 10 in his last 12, with one of those being a no contest. So technically 11 in his last 12, so to speak. You know what I'm saying? So, yeah, I mean, I would think that that battle is probably going to be wanting some ranked competition coming up. So I don't know if he's going to try to make that happen, or, you know, if he's going to end up getting another fight. But if he does end up with another unranked guy, that would be a good one. The Dalby and Zaleski winner. Magny is still ranked 15. Yeah. I don't think that they automatically drop you out of the rankings if you announce retirement. Like, I don't think that just like you instantly fall off the rankings if you are already there. Anyway, all right. So that was that fight. Good showing for Brian Battle. Happy about that. And we'll see what they end up giving him. But I mean, to be honest, and you can call me a bit of a glazer here, a little bit of a booster. I'll take that criticism, but I think that whatever they're throwing at Brian Battle, he'll be able to overcome. I think that that battle is absolutely worthy of being ranked at the very least. Is he champion material? Maybe. Maybe. I'll give it a solid maybe. I put him in the same camp in my feeling about them as I put Lerone Murphy in. Still too early to tell, but I like the way that they fight. They're showing a lot of grit and determination, a lot of skill, good fight IQ. I would think that they're not out of the conversation until they put themselves out of the conversation. That's how I look at it personally. Obviously, very different styles, but overall, I think about them in similar fashion because I think that they both have the potential until they themselves don't have the potential anymore. Moving on. Let's do William Gomez versus Joanderson Brito. Now, I saw my buddy Chase Parton in the Discord saying that this was a highway robbery for William Gomez. Um, I don't think that this was the worst robbery I have ever seen. I would class this as a petty theft, but it was still the wrong decision. However, what I will say to this is Brito basically let the fight slip away from him himself. I think that he could have won this fight with a couple of better adjustments, and I just don't think that he made them. Like, what I would say is that Brito, I talked about Brian Battle overcommitting. I think that Brito also overcommitted to some of the clinches when he was doing some really nice work with his hands. Why are you clinching up when you have dude in a compromised position with your striking? Like, he went into these clinches after landing a couple of shots. Like, bro, you could have just stayed on the outside. You're getting yourself into a position where now this guy has the potential to change course on you. And obviously he did a couple of times there. Once Brito stopped going for the wrestling, Gomez did good defensive work to stay out of striking range. So, I mean, I will say that, yeah, had he just continued to let his hands go, maybe Gomez would have been on the back foot, just evading the entire fight. But that does look better if the guy's just staying out of range and, running away from you. That's pretty much how Sean Strickland beat Paulo Costa, right? Paulo Costa was running a fucking marathon laterally around the cage. Sean Strickland was pointing him when he could, and he won the fight. So I mean, Brito probably could have had that if he had just stayed at range and let Gomez just run away from him, which he was doing a decent job of. But even in those circumstances when they were at distance, Brito just didn't let his hands go enough. It wasn't enough. Because I even said on the watch along, I said that this could be a split decision. And if it goes to Gomez, I'm not going to be the maddest on the planet Earth. Like, I mean, I don't think that it would be correct. And I still don't think it was correct. But I think that this was Brito's fight to lose, and he let it slip away from him. So, petty theft for Gomez to get the split decision win, but this was not the sharpest that we have seen Joe Anderson Brito. That would be my assessment of the way that he fought in that fight. I think it's unfortunate now because that puts him at 17-4. You know, he was doing pretty good there for a minute. See all those wins. He was on a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 fight win streak. That would have been a 6 fight win streak coming off of this win streak thereafter, or that there before, with a win over Diego Lopez, of course, speaks volumes now. So, I mean, you see all of these wins, aside from this draw. I mean, it sucks to have a streak like this beaten against a guy who I don't think is really that great. I mean, Gomez does not inspire any kind of great confidence for me based on that performance. I think he was somewhat gifted that win. I will not be putting my money on him in the future unless he is fighting a serious can. But a win's a win at the end of the day. It's going down in the record books as such. So, congratulations to Mr. Gomez. All right. Moving on. We've got the co-main event of the evening. That is Nasruddin Imavov versus Brandon Allen. Yeah, real quick though, Larry saying hometown advantage. If that fight was anywhere but France, Brito would have won. That is very possible. Again, I was slightly critical of the French commission here. The French judging certainly could have played a part in that one. In fact, I'm fairly certain that it did. Anyway, moving on to a fight that was nowhere near close enough to be a split decision. This is Nasruddin Imavov versus Brandon Allen. I believe that it was Aljamain Sterling who said after this fight that Allen looked just off in this fight. I'm glad that someone else besides me said that so that I wasn't crazy because I didn't think that this was a like I just Allen didn't look like himself. And Chase last week was talking about passing the eye test when it comes to Brandon Allen and how he did not do that for him prior to this fight. I would think that this performance would very, very well put him in the far negative camp for a lot of people if that's how they were judging him prior to this fight, because this was really just a very unfortunate implosion for Allen, because Allen just looked like he just didn't look like himself. He was fighting like a different person out there. I mean, he was all control for the first round. Got to give him that. But he didn't do anything with it when he got those, when he got the takedown and had all of that control. And then again, going back to the fight IQ compliments here, Imavov made some really nice adjustments to his approach from the start of the second round to defend all of Allen's wrestling. And then the second and third were all Imavov on the ground and on the feet. So, I mean, Allen just really imploded in this fight over the course of it and too early into it, to be perfectly honest. I mean, he was at the point where he was shooting on his knees for these takedowns that were nowhere near there. I mean, that was close to the end of the fight, of course, but even still, it's bro, you got to know that there's nothing doing there. I mean, he just didn't look like he had the energy towards the end of the fight to stand and bang if he wanted to. So this was really an unfortunate showing. And it's even more unfortunate because I don't think that my criticism of Nasruddin Imavov stays the same. The fact that he is number 4, I just don't think that he is as skilled as that number would indicate. But he keeps getting wins. So what the fuck am I supposed to do, right? I mean, like I can't I can't fault the man for winning. And as I said, I think that he did a great job of adjusting his approach after the first round. So the win is deserved, but I just got to believe that Imavov is like, I don't think that he's champion material. Maybe I'm wrong. I'll eat these words. You can clip this and send it back to me when he gets his belt, but a win over Jared Cannonier at the stage that he is at, plus this win against Brandon Allen, who did not look at all like himself. And it's not because of anything that Imavov was doing in the first round. He just looked like he might have been sick. Like he looked like he might have had like a cold or something. Like he just looked depleted. He looked depleted in that first round, after the first round, and then all the way through second and third. So I don't know. But does it equal up to Imavov having championship potential? I don't know if I see that either. Either way, a win is a win, and it was a well-deserved win. Unanimous decision for Imavov. That's fine. All good. He retains his ranking. Allen does not move up. That's going to be a bit of a setback. Anytime that you get close to the top and then lose a big fight like that, it's going to be a lot harder to climb back up into that position again. You generally do not get another shot at something that high that quickly. So we'll see what happens for Mr. Allen going forward. And I want to know what the hell was wrong with him, to be perfectly honest. All right. So we come to the main event. This is Renato Moicano versus Benoit Saint-Denis. The chat has been on fire with the conversations about Renato Moicano and his separated shoulder. I thought that was fucking wild when we found that out after the fight. How the fuck was he cleared to fight is the question that I have. Chase was saying, "Oh, the show must go on. The show must go on." Well, no, like from the fighter's perspective, perhaps you're not wrong, but you will not get cleared to fight with something that bad. He's saying that it happened weeks before the fight started. I mean, did they not x-ray him during the physical? Like, how the fuck was he able to pass his pre-fight exams? I mean, that's insane to me, but regardless, the man goes in there with a separated shoulder. Moicano gets the first takedown he attempts and then proceeds to do a full fight's worth of damage in about 4 minutes' time. Beautiful control paired with heavy elbows and punches fucked both of Benoit Saint-Denis' eyes up royally. To the point where that dude looked like he was wearing a fucking mask. Bro, was that bad news. His eyes were beyond fucked. Benoit showed his toughness, as I would say that he arguably took the second round. So, I mean, had his eyes not been as badly damaged as they were, perhaps it could have been a different story for him. But that was not the case. So, doctor comes in, does a very, very thorough eye exam. It took quite a while for the doctor to reach the conclusion that he could not see out of the eye that was clearly swollen shut. But the fight is called off, and Renato Moicano gets the victory. Well deserved. I did not think that Moicano had it in him to be as dynamic as he was in that first round. That was my mistake, and I will take my lickings for that one. Because I thought that Benoit Saint-Denis was going to be tougher, quicker, and it turned out to be the exact opposite. Moicano came out with a point to prove, got the takedown pretty easily. He did that little spinny, kind of tilt-a-whirly action, and they spun to the ground, got the control, and then it was just a crazy amount of damage done in one round. Fucking insane. So, yeah, I mean, there's really not too much to say about the fight other than that. I do think that Benoit did some decent work in the second round, being able to land some strikes and whatnot. Like I said, I do think that he might have taken that second round, but when the doctor says no go, the doctor says no go. So it is what it is. Renato Moicano gets the victory and calls out Paddy Pimblett amongst a smattering of other interesting things that he said on the mic, not to be outdone by Brian Battle talking all of that shit about France. Moicano gets on the mic and says, here's just a selection of what he says. I have in the notes that he said that he wanted to talk shit about the French, but after going to the Louvre, he couldn't do it. So he went to an art museum and said, wow, these French people can't be that bad. Look at these cool paintings. He also said that the French people are not that bad, but their government sucks. He said that he was not a big fan of their president, in a little bit more colorful language than I have used there. He said that the French Revolution couldn't erase Jesus. He says that everyone needs to know that democracy is a fallacy and needs to read Democracy, the God That Failed. And again, somewhere in all of that horse shit, he called out Paddy Pimblett. So par for the course with Renato Moicano as far as his post-fight interviews go. Certainly an entertaining one. I guess that's really all there is to say about that. I'm not so well versed on the French Revolution and the intricacies of geopolitics to be able to give you an informed opinion about the merits or lack thereof of democracy in France. I am generally a pretty big supporter of democracy, but I have not read The God That Failed. So maybe I need to read that, and I'll give you a full book report if I do. Either way, Moicano gets a nice victory here. And yeah, I mean, I would say that Moicano getting that Paddy Pimblett fight would be cool. Why not? I see no problem there. If they want to do that, Moicano is somebody that I think I underestimated coming into this fight. And I really should not have done that. So that is egg on my face. He's on a 4-fight win streak now. RDA being his last loss. Again, I think that in 2022, losing to RDA is not the greatest look on the planet. Lost to Fiziev before that. Also one that is, I'd say that holds up. Fiziev is a tough motherfucker. I mean, really, I guess that's the other big thing about Renato Moicano's record. All of his losses are to guys who either are or were at the top of the sport in some capacity. Brian Ortega, of course, challenged for the belt. Jose Aldo, one of the greatest to ever do it. Korean Zombie, another guy who was high level in his day. Rafael Fiziev, a little bit of a backslide, but still a super tough guy. RDA, one that people thought had champion potential for a long time there. So, I mean, these are still guys who are, good losses, in my opinion. I think that his losses hold up. So, all of that being said, does that equal up to Renato Moicano jumping his way up? I mean, I don't think that it would be too far off. Why not? Let him get the Paddy Pimblett fight. See what happens there, because that would be the true indicator of where both of those guys are. Because honestly, I think that I sort of have both of them in the same position in my mind. I think that they're both. I underestimate both of those guys, and then I get proven wrong by both of them. So throw them in the cage together and see who the better man is. so that I can get a clear picture of at least one of them. All right. So that right there, my friends, was UFC Fight Night, Moicano versus Saint-Denis, aka UFC Paris. Overall, not a not the greatest card that we've had all year. It wasn't terrible. I would say that it was, in the solid 6.5 to 7 range, maybe closer to the 6 than the 7, but a 6.5 I would give it. Not bad. Couple of decent fights on here. Couple of decent performances when the fights themselves were not um the greatest, not super competitive. But I think that the big takeaway for me from this whole thing was that there were a couple of guys that I had not the highest opinion of going into this. Some of them stayed the same, some of them changed. I would say that Fares Zayam was the one that changed the most. And maybe Charrier, because I think I might have been doubting him a little bit as well. But people like Taylor Lopoulos, um, people like William Gomez, like these guys did not do enough to change my opinion of them as fighters with this card. So that's that. Let's go a little bit farther back in time. I, of course, was not live for this Dana White's Contender Series Week 7, but I did a replay watch along on Wednesday night because Tuesday night I was seeing these guys, Sum 41. Great show. If you have an opportunity to see them on their farewell tour, I would highly recommend you do that. But I did not watch live. I watched the replay and have seen all of these fights, and I thought that this was a pretty decent week. So let's get into it, shall we? To start it off, we have Alexa. I believe it's Alexa. It's spelled Alexia, but I think they were pronouncing it Alexa. Alexa Thainara versus Rose Conceição. Conceição is the current LFA strawweight champion. I don't think that they're going to strip her for her loss here, but I liked how Thainara was fighting in this fight. Thainara was pressure heavy and super aggressive throughout the entire fight. Man, she was really in your face. She didn't give Conceição an inch to work. Conceição, I think, was getting overwhelmed by the pressure that Thainara was putting on her and just didn't know how to adjust in time. Conceição had some decent striking and kicks, but nowhere near as dynamic as Thainara. She was just one step behind the entire fight. So, Thainara ran away with it pretty much. I would say that, did they end up 30? Yeah, 30-27s across the board. Yeah, I would say that that was accurate. And it looks like Thainara might have decent power in her hands because she landed some pretty good shots, but did not get the knockdown or knockout, of course. She might have gotten a knockdown. Did they credit her with one? Nah, I guess not. Okay. But either way, it looks like she's got decent power in her hands, so there's potential for her to be pretty dangerous. I like the way that she was fighting. She fought very aggressively. Her performance was impressive to me. She, I'll talk about them all at the end, of course, but she got a contract, and I think it was well deserved. I enjoyed that fight very much. But a fight that I enjoyed even more than that, or at least a performance that I enjoyed even more than that, was Kevin Vallejos versus Cam Teague. Kevin Vallejos, my man, the Argentinian, fought against Gene Silva on the Contender Series. That is his only loss. He is now 14-1 because of that loss. Had he not fought Gene Silva, he would have been 14-0. Well, or 13-0, whatever. If he didn't have the one because of Gene Silva, he would be undefeated. That's what I'm trying to say. And it showed when it came to his fucking boxing. Good Lord, was that guy's boxing brilliant. I mean, granted, he was not getting a lot of opposition back from Mr. Teague, so it's a little bit hard to say how it's going to be against guys who are going to be more dynamic with their wrestling. If somebody's going to be able to get him to the ground, what's he going to do there? I'm always very cautious at this point about putting all of my eggs in the basket of any fighter that we've only seen do one thing. If we've seen extremely nice hands from a guy and not a lot of testing when it comes to his wrestling and grappling abilities, then in the back of my mind, I'm always going to wonder, how are those elements? So until we see that, I can't put all of my backing behind him. But before seeing that and only seeing the boxing, I can say with all certainty that his boxing was fucking fantastic. Good Lord. On top of all of his combos, which were going low high, body top, very nice. The finishing sequence, I had it counted at 14 strikes. Dana says that he had his people counted up and it was 20 strikes. But either which way, no matter whether it was 14, 20, fucking, 17, any number that pick a number that's over 10. That sequence to end the fight was fucking beautiful. Fan fucking tastic. The boxing that he was doing, the striking that ended the fight. So this guy is a hot prospect for sure, this Kevin Vallejos. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe Mr. Parton was telling me that this is the dude who said that he wanted to go and fight Movsar Evloev because Movsar, of course, had his fight canceled. If this was the guy that wanted to have that fight, I wouldn't be mad at it off of that performance. I mean, he probably needs to show that he's got a little bit more going for him than that, in order to prove that he deserves something of that caliber. But I appreciate the balls in him saying that. And after a victory like that, I mean, give me a fucking break, dude. That was it was so clean, so incredibly clean. So really, really impressive victory for Kevin Vallejos on the Contender Series Week 7. Moving on, this is Kevin Christian versus Francesco Mazzeo. Christian is 6'7" tall, so extremely tall guy. Ended up getting the win via triangle. I would say that Christian was not looking that great before the triangle. He fights a little bit jumpy. He got taken down pretty easily, even though I guess he wanted to be on his back, but I don't know. Either way, it looked optically like he got taken down pretty easily. And the biggest point of all, he's 6'7" and did not use his range in the slightest. After this victory, he did win. I was kind of curious as to whether or not he was going to get the contract. He did end up getting it, but I don't know if he necessarily deserved it personally. I don't think that I would have awarded him the contract, even though it was a very nice triangle after some adversity. However, I would say that this was Mazzeo's fight to lose, and his gas tank just wouldn't hold out. Christian got the triangle armbar pretty easily thereafter because of the depleted gas tank from Mazzeo. That was more on Mazzeo than it was on Christian. The performance that he had there was not inspiring to me. He did end up getting the contract, and that's great. I would think that him coming into the organization, he might be one of those guys that is going to come in and immediately lose. That's where my gut is at right now. Could it not be that? Of course. And for his sake, I hope that it's not, but I'm going with what I saw. And I don't think that performance inspired a great amount of confidence. But nevertheless, he gets the contract. So, tearing through these things, we've got next up. This is Daniel Frunza versus Vadim Kutsi. Kutsi throws heavy, but got caught early. Kutsi has some decent fight IQ to get to the ground in that first round for a little bit of recovery. He got an uppercut, Kutsi, that dropped Frunza later in that round. The amount of swing Coetzee puts on some of his winging shots was a little bit ridiculous. He was throwing a little bit wild. Um, just not even wild in the sense that they were uncontrolled, but wild in the sense that, like, bro, you're leaving so much real estate. If you're bringing your arm all the way back here to come all of this distance, I mean, that the winging shots, like, it's like he was starting like somewhere around like this range, coming up, like his arm would kind of come back and then forward. Like it wasn't even like a pull, like your normal pullback and then forward. It was like swooping that way. So it's like, bro, these shots that I mean, like you're essentially telegraphing them no matter how quick you throw them when you're swinging like that. So, um, I would say that he needs to tighten up a little bit on his fundamentals as far as his technical performance goes, but I didn't dislike the way he was fighting. It was just unfortunate that, much like Mizeo in the last fight, Coetzee gassed out, and Frunza did a nice job of staying calm under early pressure to let Coetzee overwork himself, get through all of that, and then finally get the victory uh, at the end of the day for Frunza. So it wasn't the strongest showing on the planet. I thought he looked okay. This is another one that I would have been slightly on the fence about a contract going to, but either which way, it wasn't the worst performance. And also, I do think that Coetzee sort of let himself down a little bit by overworking a gas tank that couldn't hold up. So unfortunate for Coetzee, because I thought that he probably could have taken that fight had he fought a little bit differently. And to wrap up the Contender Series Week 7, we got the heavyweights here. This is Bailey Schoenfelder versus Danilo Voyvodkin. Bailey was a huge favorite coming into this fight. Bailey, who is a former football player, American football, for all of you internationals out there. He played for, I forget which college it was, but he played college ball. I think it might have been University of Minnesota. That's sticking out in my mind, but I could be wrong. Either way, he was a college football player. Switched over to MMA, like so many Greg Hardys, not a person that you really want to be following in the footsteps of, but I'll leave that to the side. Anyway, Schoenfelder was a very big favorite, is the point, and Voyvodkin came in and fucking smashed the fuck. Danilo went out to Caio Bahaio's tattoo artist to get his fight to the end tattoo that he's got on his side there, his little stomach tattoo, similar fonts. And the tattoo on his back looks like it was laser printed onto his skin. That dude got a font straight up tattooed on his back. Like, you see that every once in a while. There's a dude in One who also has that. He's got a chest tattoo, and it is clearly like printed off of the computer font. Voyvodkin looks like he also has that, but you know, Voyvodkin is fighting out of Ukraine. Obviously, there is a lot going on in that region of the world, so it was nice to see him put on for his people. I wonder what his people think of those tattoos, but I digress. Anyway, really nice left-right combination was what got Schoenfelder down. I mean, that's really all you got to say about this. I mean, there was a couple of decent leg kicks from Voyvodkin just to kind of create a little bit of space, feel the distance out a little bit, but I mean, this was a pretty open and shut case. Left-right or a right-left combo gets Schoenfelder to the ground. And the other big part of the sequence, and another decent IQ move, was Voyvodkin immediately going for the neck to choke the ever-loving fuck out of Schoenfelder. So not only does he have the knockdown power, but he had the awareness to instinctually go for the neck when it was open. He got it, choked him out. That's all she wrote. Huge, huge underdog. I mean, the odds here have him as a plus 500. I mean, I think my book had him as a plus 800, and Schoenfelder was a minus 12, I think, or something like that. So it was pretty crazy. But This is why you always put small money on the dogs when it comes to the Contender Series. Decent performance overall, and a well-deserved win for Voivodkin. I'd like to see him be tested a little bit harder in his next fight, just so that we can see what he's looking like against higher level competition, guys who have a little bit of a better chin, even though Schoenfelder apparently had a great chin. He was another one of these dudes that was ending worlds. And he could also be another guy that might have just got caught. He might be able to come in and come back to the Contender Series and have another fight. And maybe we'll see him at some point in the organization, but it was not his night on the evening. So good job for Danilo Voivodkin out of Ukraine. So that's 5 fights, and of the 5 fights, there were 5 contracts. Contracts for Thainara, Valleos, Christian, Frunza, and Voivodkin. I would take issue with Christian getting a contract. I just did not. I didn't really like the way that he was fighting all that much. Apparently, Mick Maynard wanted him in the organization. I don't exactly know why, but what Mick wants, Mick gets. So good for him getting his contract that way. And then Frunza, I mean, it wasn't a terrible performance. And he did end up getting the finish. So I'm not mad that he got a contract. It would have been one of the lower end guys. Like if you were doing the power rankings for the entire run of the Contender Series for this year, I would have put it at the lower rung of the ladder, but still fine. And fine that he got the contract. I'm not super mad at it. Christian would be the only one that I said I would not have given a contract to. So 5 fights, 5 contracts, all good except for that one, in my opinion. Obviously, the organization thought otherwise, but that is the Contender Series for Week 7. Of course, we will be back tomorrow night, myself and the Vitz King, back on this very channel right here to watch next week's Contender Series, or next week, this week's Contender Series. To watch tomorrow's airing of the Contender Series. We will be back. No concerts standing in my way for the rest of the year. We should be good for all 3 of the remaining weeks. 8, 9, and 10 coming up. We should be good for all of those. So we will reconvene tomorrow for that. Trying to get a video out this week if I can. It looking like I probably should be able to. I just got to get some writing done. So I have not started just yet. I don't know if I'm necessarily going to go too heavy on the Paris card. I might just pull out a couple of select things to talk about there, see what else is going on in the news, just do a regular Yama episode, perhaps, unless something strikes me as something that I really want to talk about. There is one idea that I had for a video that would be similar to the John Jones video that I put out, which could be interesting. And I like doing those kinds of videos only because I like just essay style videos where I just sort of talk and let video clips play. I think it allows me to expound upon my opinions in a little bit more of an articulated way than I'm able to express off the cuff. I generally like to, if I have a point to make, I'm better if I write it down. That's why I'm a writer. But we'll see what ends up happening for this week. But I do need to get some video content out. So, we're still riding off of the Noche UFC video, and that's super old at this point. So, any which way, there will be new stuff coming soon. That I can promise you. In the meantime, let me throw this right back up here. Those are the URLs for our channels. Myself at Yama Show, youtube.com/@Yama Show. And for my co-host, who is not here currently, but I am such a homie that I am going to shout it out anyway. Make sure that you follow my dude, subscribe to his channel. My normal co-host for this show that you are currently watching, Mr. Chase Parton, is at CP Smalls on YouTube, youtube.com/@CP Smalls. He is also on Twitter at Creative Parton, Tin, how you spell that name. Give him a follow. I am at Yema Show on all social media. Follow me as well, especially on Instagram. Always posting some generally funny stuff over there uh, when the inspiration strikes or I see something worth commenting on. Um, Make sure you're checking out your stories on Instagram, but I am also on Twitter as well at Yema Show, on Kick, Twitch, Trovo, YouTube, Facebook, fucking Instagram, all those places at Yama Show. Make sure that you are subscribed if you have not done so already. And if you enjoyed this stream, everybody, I implore you to give us a like because it really does help out in the algorithm, get it to more people who might be interested in the content. Uh, Chase is going to work through his internet problems, everybody. I know that this was a little bit of a different dealie with me just being by myself. I apologize for that. Of course, I would have preferred if I had my co-host with me as well. Thank you to everybody who was bearing with me. I appreciate all you guys in the chat. Shout out to Anakin. Shout out to Larry. Shout out to John Dong, the homie. Lane, who was stopping by. Western Mass Climber. Appreciate all of you guys. Rick Allen, thank you guys for hanging out. And until next time, everybody, I guess that's going to do it for tonight. Have yourself a great rest of your night. As I said, we will be back tomorrow for the Contender Series right here, myself and Vitz King watching along with you guys. So if you are hanging out watching the Contender Series, stop back into the Amma channel, say what's up to us then. Until then, everybody, have a great rest of your night. See you tomorrow. And most importantly, as always, fight on.